Good evening. Wherever you are, and however you feel right now. Let this be your moment to slow down, breathe deeply, and drift into a world far away from the noise. Tonight's story is called The Inn of Lost Hours. Once, in a quiet valley nestled between gentle hills and winding rivers, there stood a small village untouched by time. At the edge of this village, where the road narrowed into soft grass and the wind carried stories instead of dust, there was an old stone building with ivy climbing up its walls and lanterns glowing softly in the windows. It was known as the Inn of Lost Hours. There was no sign above the door, no advertisements in the town square. And yet, those who needed it most always seemed to find their way there, travelers with tired feet, hearts too full, or time too empty. They came for rest. But they left with something else. One autumn evening, just as twilight colored the sky in soft lavender and gold, a woman arrived at the inn. Her name was Miriam. She had been driving for hours, though she couldn't quite say where she was headed. The days had blurred together lately, work, family, regrets, worries. Time had become something slippery, something she couldn't hold. She pulled off the road when she saw the lanterns. Something about the light felt familiar. Like a memory just out of reach. Inside, the inn smelled of cedar wood and warm bread. A fire crackled softly in the hearth, and a tall grandfather clock ticked in slow, steady rhythm. Behind the front desk stood an older woman, with kind eyes and a voice like velvet. "Welcome," she said. "We've been expecting you." Miriam hesitated. "You have?" The woman nodded, smiling. "Everyone who comes here arrives exactly when they're supposed to. You can call me Eloise." There were no check-in forms, no keys handed over. Just a quiet gesture toward the stairs and a promise. "Your room will be ready. But first, if you like, there's a sitting room at the end of the hall. Some guests find what they need there." Miriam, curious and weary, followed the hallway. It led to a cozy parlor with old armchairs and shelves lined with clocks, grand clocks, pocket watches, cuckoos, sundials, even hourglasses filled with silver sand. Yet none of them ticked. Every single one was still. In the center of the room was a long wooden table. And on it, sat a journal. A soft sign beside it read, "Write down the hour you wish you hadn't lost." Miriam stared at the book for a long while. Then she sat down, picked up the pen, and began to write. "1 hour on my father's last birthday, when I chose work over visiting him." She paused. "1 hour when I was too angry to forgive my friend. 1 hour I spent staring at a screen instead of playing with my daughter. And then 1 hour I wasted crying over something I couldn't change." As she wrote, the air in the room seemed to shift. One by one, the clocks began to tick. Softly. Slowly. Gently. Miriam looked up. The hourglasses glowed faintly. A warm hush settled over her, like a blanket of peace. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't rushing, regretting, or reaching. She was simply here. Later that evening, in her room, she found a folded note on her pillow. It read, "No hour is truly lost. Some simply wait for us to return to them." That night, Miriam dreamed of her father laughing by the lake, her friend's voice on the phone, her daughter's hand in hers. The moments weren't gone. They were just sleeping, waiting for her to remember their worth. She woke with the sunrise, feeling lighter. Not because everything was fixed, but because she finally understood. Time doesn't only move forward. It lives in us, in the choices we make now, and the grace we give to what once was. At breakfast, Eloise handed her a small, quiet package. Inside was a pocket watch. It didn't tell the current time. Instead, engraved on the back were the words, "This moment matters." Miriam smiled, tears soft in her eyes. She hugged Eloise, thanked her, and stepped outside into the golden morning. The inn, behind her, seemed to shimmer for a moment, almost as if it were made of time itself. Then the wind turned, and the road opened before her, gentle and new. She did not look back. She didn't need to. She had carried what mattered with her. Thank you for joining tonight's story. May you find peace in the hours behind you, presence in the moment before you, and gentleness in the time still to come. Good night.